Yes, guys, welcome back to another video. Welcome to the George Benson Football Channel. I am joined today by none other than the man himself, Mr. Joey Knight. I'm going to say the best thing that's happened to Chelsea YouTube in the last 3 years. When did I start? 6 years ago. In the last 3 years, then. That's what I'm going to say.
That's an introduction, mate. That's an introduction. Thanks for having me on, mate. I keep getting it. I've been doing these live streams recently, and everyone goes, "Why have you never done a video with George?" And I'm like, "You're not a loyal follower. You're not a loyal follower because I have done one with him."
That was March. I was actually going through the archives just to remind myself, just so I could throw some dates out to make it look like I do my research. And today, I'm hoping that Joey's it's gonna make me feel a bit better. To be honest, if you've been watching the channel this week, you'll know that it's been a tough week. The Man City game was kind of just like the nail in a coffin, but instead of like putting me under the ground, burying me, and I shut up and say nothing, it's kind of just unlocked a load of demons. It's made me feel dark. It's made me feel down. And we're recording this on January the 30th, and still Chelsea haven't dipped our toes, our feet, our fingers, anything into the transfer market. And I want to know, top end, do you see this as a bigger problem than the form? Or do you think, actually, you know what? Maybe it's the fact we've just been making loads of transfers that's been the problem, and we're not actually in a bad place. Please make me feel better. I'm hoping you can.
I wish I could. I wish I could make you feel better, mate. But I think that there is some seriously risky business going on, or lack of business going on. I think that at this moment in time, right, I think anyone that's watched my channel will know that my sort of dream scenario for this transfer window, and I actually think it's a very realistic scenario as well. I'm not saying, oh, go out there and drop 100 million on Šeško or anything like that, get Osman. I'm saying my dream scenario for this transfer window would have been to bring back Georgi Petrovic. It would have been to recall Andre Santos off the loan. And it would have initially been to try and get something going with a John Duran deal if we are obviously offloading Disasi and possibly Joao Felix even to Aston Villa. That would have been a dream scenario for me in this window. The fact that now, you know, the John Duran deal is off the table. Apparently he's going to Al Nassr. I think that's a wild move at the age of 21.
I get it though. Like, just go get the packet. He'll probably get sold for the same amount of money in like 2 years once he's scored him 50 goals, and then he'll still get a mega European move. But like, I think what you're saying makes a lot of sense to me. You know, about like, I mean, let's me just throw an idea out there. Petrovic called back. Sanchez go to Strasbourg. Seems like a decent deal. That Santos come back. Kiernan Dewsbury Hall go to Strasbourg. If it's all about like Blue Co protecting both Chelsea and Strasbourg, I don't know if you saw the Liam Rossini comments, the Strasbourg manager. He was saying how the owners care as much about Strasbourg as they do about Chelsea. That ticked me off as well. That sent me flipping sideways. I'm like, but isn't it supposed to be, you know, they didn't spend 1.5 or 2.5 or however many billions on Strasbourg. That was just like the arm extension of the idea. So surely, if this is about a project that allows things to build to make Chelsea successful, surely we can still help Strasbourg whilst helping ourselves. Because like you say, Petrovic, he was better than flipping Sanchez last season. Even Maurizio Pochettino could see that. So what do you think's going through the mind of the people making these decisions at the club right now? Because surely Maresca isn't happy to have Kiernan Dewsbury Hall as the backup if Enzo's not fit, or to keep having Sanchez in goal. Surely he doesn't genuinely believe that he trusts him. What do you think?
I can't say that I feel that the obsession with playing Robert Sanchez is anything but an Enzo Maresca decision, because he has got Jorgensen on the bench. He does have the luxury of seeing Jorgensen day in, day out at Cobham, which we don't. And maybe Jorgensen isn't a great shot stopper, and maybe we're reading false data. Maybe, for example, Jorgensen is making howlers on the training ground and we're not seeing them. And it just so happens that because we've seen him at a slightly lower level Obviously in the cup competitions, and against bottom of the league at the time, Southampton, when we saw him play that one league game he's played for us, maybe we read a little bit of forced data. That's the only thing that I could possibly think of as to why he is sticking with Robert Sanchez. The amount of points that we've lost through Robert Sanchez this season is already criminal. But it's high.
Do you know the actual number?
No, I don't.
I'm not entirely sure either, but I think it might even be above 10. When you add up all of those howlers that have led to goals, like they don't usually come in games that we end up winning 4-1 or 5-1 when it's too late. It doesn't matter.
But this is the thing, George, right? You say about howlers that have led to goals. How many times have we seen them where the opposition team have squandered their opportunity? And I think that's not going to go down on the stat board for you. So, for example, I can think of one off the top of my head when he literally still thinks he's playing for Brighton, gives the ball to a Brighton player at Stamford Bridge, whoever it is that goes through on goal, I can't think now, but he misses an absolute sitter, and then it doesn't go down on that statistic board, right? And what I'm saying is most games, there's one of those moments, there's one of those things, and at the start of the season, I was a little bit reluctant to sort of bash Robert Sanchez because I kind of started to feel like he was making improvements. I think that what I've now learned about Robert Sanchez is that sometimes when you think someone is incompetent, they do something that is competent, and then you go, you're getting better. And you're not. You're just doing your job. You're just getting competent.
It's a false dawn.
Yeah. Yeah. So
it's a constant false hope with him.
I think that what I would say is, regardless of the transfer window, I want to echo your sentiments there in terms of what you said about the way you sort of felt about the comments in relation to Strasbourg. I don't care about Strasbourg. I'm not a Strasbourg fan. Don't care about Strasbourg. Had never heard of them before we were took over. Literally don't care. The same way I never cared about Vitesse or Vitesse. I never cared about them. We loaned loads of players over there. We had a working relationship with them. All right, we didn't in part own them or whatever. Never cared about them. My priority is Chelsea Football Club. Now, I believe that if you bring Andre Santos and Petrovic back, I believe that Enzo Maresca immediately starts working with them. And the proof is in the pudding. We brought Trevor Chalobah back, right? For the Man City game, Mauricio Pochettino had the option of starting, if he wanted to, one of, 4 centre-backs, right? He had Levi Colwill back fit. He had Tosin Adarabioyo, a man who will know not only Pep Guardiola's system, but he'll know Phil Foden like the back of his hand. He'll know a few of them City players really, really well, having come through the academy there years ago. And a man that Tosin Adarabioyo was sort of second in line after Wesley Fofana went out injured. Who did Enzo Maresca start with? He started with Trevor Chalobah. And that tells me
speaks volumes, doesn't it?
Even once Tosin Adarabioyo was back available and Levi Colwill was back available, he still starts Trevor Chalobah in there. And that tells me that Trevor Chalobah probably isn't a player that you wanted to loan. So I believe, personally, that if the recalls of Petrovic and Andre Santos were to happen, I believe that not only would that benefit us, I believe that Enzo Maresca would be using those boys pretty much straight away.
Yeah, I think when you look at Sanchez's record, which we've already said today, like it's just an astronomical amount of errors. And I'm so happy you mentioned that point about the ones that, like, the nearlies, the ones that the stats won't remember, the ones that the people that are like making the compilations of Sanchez screw ups. No one's putting those nearlies in there. But I think you're spot on, and I think the problem is, and we're going to be doing a video on Joey's channel, so make sure you check Joey's links in the description. We're going to do like a mid-season review over there. But I think the big problem here is that it is seeming to me like we are just protecting Strasbourg right now. And the priority is to not disrupt the apple cart there, because they're not doing that well. I think they're about mid-table in France, which I think for them is I don't know, their fans were not happy when these new owners came in. Because I think any football club, if it was the other way round, you wouldn't want to feel like, oh, we're just like getting the sloppy seconds from Chelsea and we're getting what they don't really want, and we're not gonna buy these like top players to make us compete with PSG, but we're just gonna get the knockoffs. But I think you're spot on. I think there isn't anybody, and if you are one of these people in the comments that can like rationalize or give me the stats, yeah, let me know the stats. Is there any world where Petrovic was to come back today and doesn't play ahead of Robert Sanchez against West Ham at the Bridge on Monday night? I don't think any of you can say a word about it. And Santos is an actual, like, I think he's a gem. I've seen a lot of him. Obviously, Chelsea fans keep a good eye on those players that do go out on loan. I wouldn't say I'm not a Strasbourg fan. I'm not a Strasbourg fan. I will say I'm not a Strasbourg fan. But I keep an eye on what they're doing because they got our players there. And the chances are we'll probably take more of them when we realise that we don't have the funds available anymore to actually invest on proper players in the squad, because we've not managed the way that we've spent the money. I wanted to ask you as well about Felix, because I think Joao Felix is a player that splits the fan base a little bit. I think if I was to summarise the way I understand it, I think the modern age football fan loves him and think he's been really hard done by. I think when I see him play, I get excited about that kind of element of you don't really know what you're going to get. You could do something magic, but then that end product just isn't there. In a transfer window where we've been barking on about sign a striker, sign a striker, sign a striker, do you think there's a world where if Felix doesn't end up leaving, we could actually try him out as a number 9? Or do you just think that is tactically something Maresca wouldn't do because of the way that Jackson presses and maybe Felix doesn't?
I've always thought that Joao Felix could be used as a 9, used as a false 9. One thing I do definitely think is that he should be being used. And in my opinion, I think that there's a very clear option for Enzo Maresca, which is, do I use Joao Felix or do I use Nkunku? Either one or the other gets used or comes off the bench. I know there's been some matches in the Conference League where you've seen both feature, but it's usually almost like that's a like for like. And if that is the case, I'd rather see Joao Felix than Nkunku. And it seems mad that I'm saying that, because a year ago, you know, I remember being at Stamford Bridge when we knocked Newcastle out the cup 2-1. Petrovic again making the save in the penalty shootout that sent us through. I remember Nkunku came on for a cameo off the bench, and it was the first time I'd really seen him in the stands. I'd seen him play, and I thought, I'm excited about this boy. And through absolutely no fault of his own, and I want to make that very clear, Nkunku has lost the passion to play for Chelsea Football Club, in my opinion, right? And again, 100%. I say through no fault of his own. I'd be the same, mate. I'd be the same, because he didn't grow up a Chelsea fan. Do you know what I mean? So if I was in a job and I wasn't getting the opportunities that I thought I was going to, then I would probably be the same. However, when I see Joao Felix on a football pitch, much like you said, I do get that feeling of excitement. I do think that when he's been brought on late in games, he's given us a different dynamic, a little bit of diversity across that front line. And if one was to leave in this window and one was to leave only, I would say we could move on in Nkunku and I'd keep Joao Felix and have him in there. Now, my main thing with the Joao Felix situation, right, is I don't see why we're not able to have a team that either has Cole Palmer and Joao Felix on the pitch at the same time, or potentially, and this would be a shout that some people might not like, but it's very true, and I do think that squad depth is one thing that we felt we really, really had going in our favour, right? And at the moment, let me ask you a question. Does it feel like there's squad depth?
Do you know what? I don't think it feels like there is, because of the repetition of the selections. You know, I think if, like we've just suggested there, that you could play Felix through the middle as a number 9 or a false 9, which would probably benefit and suit him a little bit more. But I think it is almost like this, as much as I went on about this at the start of the season, like Cole Palmer is a number 10, he's got to be a number 10. you don't want to rest him, apparently, which means the likes of Felix has got his agent calling up different clubs saying, look, he's wasting himself at Chelsea. He wants out. Let's go somewhere that he's wanted and wants to play. But there's got to be a world where you put Palmer back on the right. If you look at the output, like Noni's kind of lucky in a way that he scored 2 of the easiest goals he'll ever score in his life in the last 2 games. Like, that doesn't paper over for me the cracks that have been his inconsistencies.
He's got 6
So I think
goals.
when it comes,
He's got 6 goals, Madueke, but 4 of them
Yeah.
have come against Wolves. So
I think it's 7 now after the City game, and it's 6 or 7.
there you go. Yeah, something like that. But I'd say the exact same as what you're saying there. I believe that Enzo Maresca has shown us that he's got in-game sort of versatility and the ability to adapt. Probably most prominently with Pedro Neto. So what you'll see is quite often Pedro Neto was starting over on that left wing, and then when he would make the sub, instead of subbing Pedro Neto off, he would sub Noni off, move Pedro Neto over onto the right wing, as he did against Arsenal, by the way, which was what got us the equaliser. Pedro Neto cutting in off that right wing, right? So he's shown that he's up for moving players over and having that sort of versatility across the front line in games. So why is it that we can never see a substitution where potentially Noni Madueke comes off or a Pedro Neto comes off, Joao Felix comes on, and Cole Palmer moves over to the right-hand side? Because Cole Palmer has been getting kicked to pieces this season, right? And the stats would suggest to you that Cole Palmer is as good as ever, and he's still delivering. I believe that Cole Palmer has that Mo Salah quality in him, where even when he's not taking games by the scruff of the neck, you'll still see on the stats board he's looking really good, because he's just too good to not contribute. He's always in those areas to contribute towards goals and assists. So the stats will read well for Cole Palmer. But I don't believe that Cole Palmer has found it as easy this season. I think that if I was a fly on the wall in the changing rooms, I think that managers have very specifically told their players to target him, to get stuck into him, to double up on him. And that's all well and good when he's playing in the number 10. But if you get told to do that when he's playing out wide on the right wing, you can't, there's only 11 men on the field. 10 outfield players.
You can't send them all out there.
You can't send them all out there. And by doing so, you cannot allow yourself or not allow yourself to open up space in the middle. That space could be exploited by a Joao Felix, by a player who you mentioned his end product, but what we don't mention is the fact that he does have very good link-up play, and with the likes of a Nicholas Jackson in front of him, that could work really well. So that's one thing that I definitely think that I'd like to see experimented with. But one more I will just say, George, before we move on and actually speak about transfers, one more thing is, I saw the board go up the other day, and I saw that Nicholas Jackson was being bought off, Christopher Nkunku was being bought on, right? This was at a point when our front line, obviously I'm talking about the Man City game, by the way, this was at a point when our front line had gone stale, basically. There wasn't much going on, and it had gone from a game where in the early stages we were pressing the ball hard and we were forcing them into mistakes, especially the young centre-back, and those mistakes were benefiting everyone across our front line, right? So being the game hasn't changed, right? They're still the same players on the pitch and whatnot. Being that we've seen already early on that that's a weakness, that weakness needs to be revisited. And despite the abundance of experience he's got in top flight football in comparison to Mark Yu, if you're looking at trying to revisit that weakness when you make that sub should not be Christopher Nkunku for Nicholas Jackson. It should be Mark Yu for Nicholas Jackson, because that boy will run his socks off. He'll chase down every single ball, and if you had have given him 20 minutes, I'm not saying we would have scored a goal, but he would have forced some mistakes out of those defenders and out of that back line.
Yeah, the amount of punting of the ball that Colwill did, and like we're just looking at it, and that Man City team had no legs as well. And I don't really want to talk about this game much more, but like they had no legs in that midfield, and it was almost like the game was played in slow motion for the last 30 minutes. So they were just always going to have more attacks. So I think you're spot on with that. But also, devil's advocate point here, which I've been feeling about this week and thinking this. Do you think it is actually Maresca trying to say something without actually going to the board? Because he knew what he was stepping into when he took this job. He knew that the plan, strategy transfer-wise, is to buy young players, and he is a tactical manager that can mould this team into his vision, play a modern way of football that's attractive, that can get us forward, score goals, keep the ball. Do you think that he's not bringing on the likes of Mark Guiu and still bringing on players like Nkunku, who he'll have said to someone at the club, look, I don't see a way that this guy fits in. He said it to the media. He said it to us. He's like, he's not a number 9. He's not a striker. So then when Nicholas Jackson is almost in the firing line week after week right now, because all strikers go through patches and not scoring. But do you think not bringing on a Mark Guiu is a little sign to upstairs being like, Ella, mate, just so you know, like you see that guy Nkunku running around up there, he's long gone. He mentally checked out of this club in October when he knew he was only going to be playing against Noah's Ark and flipping God knows who else in Barrow and Morecambe and these guys. So, but do you think that he's at a point now where he's also checkmated himself a little bit? Because Nkunku didn't just become a bad player overnight. He just doesn't care anymore because he knows there's no skin in the game for him. He's got nothing to fight for. It's like you say, he wasn't a Chelsea fan when he grew up. He doesn't have to fight for this badge. He doesn't feel pain or tears if we get beat. He's not upset that right now we're just falling down the table. He knows he's got another massive move ahead of him. So between now and the 3rd of February, first of all, prediction-wise, do you actually think we're going to sign anybody? Because a lot of what I see is players rejecting us. Matisse Tell doesn't want to go to Chelsea. Imagine a 19-year-old kid has got the audacity to say no to go to Chelsea, mate. Like, I think we're in real trouble. I really do.
I can't see any being that likely, to be honest, unless something comes out of nowhere. Like, let's say, for example, we look at the Garnacho deal. I mean, Mykhailo Mudryk.
Do we have to?
Mykhailo Mudryk's going to get a ban, in my opinion. I think he'll get a 2-year ban. I think if it's anything 2 years or over, I've heard, and this isn't, I don't know anything official, I've heard that we have the rights to rip up the contract if it's 2 years or over. That could be hearsay. And obviously,
I've got some hearsay to add to that too. Someone random DM me, like, it was like, you know, like when people clearly have got something to say, but they say it with such authority, you're like, oh, I know that I don't know you. You could be nobody. But he's like, the B test came back negative. Just throwing that out there. Just throwing it out. It might be right. He could be legit.
I've followed combat sport for 15 years, probably more than that, probably 18 years. I've never known a B sample come back negative. I'm drug tested by the same commission that drug tested Mykhailo Mudryk. When you do your sample, you literally pee into a cup. They give you 2 tubes, and you have to. No one else is allowed to touch it. You have to, in front of them, pour it into one, pour it into the other. So very, very unlikely.
He's done then, isn't he? Really?
What there will be is there will be a process. There will be an appeal. It will be dragged out, and there will be cases put forward for contamination, for food he's eaten when he's on international duty and stuff like that. So it'll be long and drawn out. What I'm not too keen on is us going and getting Garnacho in the meantime. I will say
60 million, so much money.
I will say that when we were first linked with Jadon Sancho, I wasn't massively keen on that one either. And now he's come in, and I wouldn't say I'm eating my words because I never said nothing too bad about it. I just said I wasn't really fussed whether we got him or not. Now, I think he's a crucial part of our team. I think he's quite integral. So I won't be quick enough to go, no, Garnacho offers us nothing. Garnacho, for me, is a clear upgrade on Mykhailo Mudryk. And he's definitely an upgrade if Mykhailo Mudryk isn't playing. However,
That's true.
when you look at the fact that we spent, 30 mil on Noni Madueke? You know, is Garnacho a better player than Noni Madueke? I don't know. And if the answer is, I don't know, should we be spending double the price tag on him? Should we not be looking at other areas of the field? And one thing one thing that's annoying me at the minute, really annoying me, and I don't know whether this is leaks from Chelsea to appease the fan base and whatnot, but every day, breaking news, Chelsea is very interested in Liam Delap. And then you read, in the summer. And I'm thinking,
yeah,
but fuck the summer. I'm not bothered about the summer. I'm bothered about now.
That's the problem.
Season.
If you give Ipswich 60 million quid now, they say yes. Like they do. You give Ipswich 60 million quid today, they say yes. But instead of that, we want to spend 60 million on Garnacho, who still won't play over Jadon Sancho. Mate, it blows my flipping mind. It blows my mind.
What do you think? Do you think that we get business done late on in the window?
No. I think we get absolutely nothing done, if I'm being honest. And I don't like feeling negative. You know, I'd love to come on here and just say, like, yeah, I'm excited and look at all of the... Like, we can't even sell Cassidy, for goodness sake. Why? Because we know we're not going to buy a midfielder, so we're just delaying that. We're just delaying the inevitable there, or we're going to keep him. I think maybe Gassasi will go on loan. I don't see many exits either. I think we've panicked, and we are going to leave it too late to sign anyone of note. And this is the problem. The likes of Matisse Tell saying no is just the start. It's just the start of players not wanting to join Chelsea because they will see a shit show. They will look at it and be like, hang on a minute. I don't know. If I'm Matisse Tell right now, do I think I'm a better footballer than Christopher Nkunku? Probably not. I'll be looking up to him being like, he's a senior figure in the French national team. I want to be getting regular minutes in the seniors the same as him. He can't get a sniff and he wants to leave. Why would he want to come? I fully understand why players right now wouldn't want to come to Chelsea. And that for me is painful because I always thought we were a club that everybody would want to come to. We have rich history, rich heritage, winning trophies every year. Who wouldn't want to come to Chelsea? Now we're flipping lucky if anybody wants to come. And even then, we buy players in, 6 months later, we send them out. It's a shit show. I don't want to go into it anymore, Joey, because we have got other stuff to do on your channel. We're going to review this season, and I don't want to get myself worked up.
Let me finish off giving you a little bit of positivity, right? We look at this glass and imagine it's half full rather than half empty.
Not like mine. Yeah.
Romeo Lavia comes back from injury and he manages to actually sustain a run in the team, right? Straight away, I think that plugs a lot of holes. Enzo Maresca, this is the hypothetical situation, right? Enzo Maresca on Monday night starts Jorgensen against West Ham. Now, if that happens and Jorgensen starts that match and performs well in that match, I then see Jorgensen getting a run in the team because it would be a statement. It wouldn't be like starting Jorgensen against Southampton when we had played 2 matches in 4 days. It would be we've had 8 days off and you start Jorgensen. So there would be no excuse of resting Robert Sanchez. Straight away, right, a goalkeeper can make a better defence, right? And not just through his shot stopping, through the safety blanket of knowing you've got someone good behind you, someone who's not going to make these mistakes and these errors and whatnot. So if these things are to happen, if Jorgensen was to come in now and start playing, if, let's say, for example, Romeo Lavia is to come back from fitness, if we were to recall a loan, but even that not being said, I do think that in spells gone by, and we'll touch on this in the next video, in spells gone by from last season, for example, I was so disheartened because we just weren't creating anything. And it's very bad timing to do this off of the back of the Man City match, where after sort of half hour of the game, we seemed like we rolled over. But what I would say is in the matches against Ipswich and in the match against Fulham and in the, in some of the games that we haven't been able to get the results in recently, I've still seen that we can consistently be a team that creates opportunities. So until those opportunities dry up and we're not creating anything, I would be reluctant to write us off too soon. I think that the form will come back, and I said this to Brian. He disagreed, but I don't think that this is a point that he should have disagreed on. Right? I think that although teams are picking up form right now, you're looking at Nottingham Forest, obviously, they got beat last time out, but they've been very, very good this season. Bournemouth are looking really, really dangerous. Newcastle are now hitting form. Aston Villa have had a patchy season, but you feel like it's going to come good from at some point. I understand all of that. But every single season of my life, right, I can't remember a season when it hasn't got to the final 10, 8 games, something like that, and you've gone, fucking hell, does anyone want Champions League spots? Everyone starts losing.
True.
Right?
So true.
I honestly believe that with, 17 games to go, 16 games to go or something in this season, I believe that if we go on one more run of like a 12-game run where we maybe don't suffer any losses or only suffer one loss in that 12 games, couple of draws, nice 8 or 9 wins or something like that, I believe that with the good work we've done early on in this season, it will put us in the top 4 spots. And do you know what as well? Apart from, even Man City, they came back and won last night in the Champions League. Apart from a couple of blips for them in Europe, I think that the coefficient should go our way this year anyway. So top 4, top 5
should be enough.
We should have enough. I think it will be all right.
I mean, I think that's good. I agree with most of what you said as well. It's not like you're just speaking nonsense. And I will say this. I think it's the fact that it is the transfer window now and that we did roll over against Man City has just exacerbated the situation this week. It's made it seem a lot worse because you want to remedy what's going wrong with the transfer window open. The fact we've not done that is the problem, but let's see what we do against West Ham. As I said at the start of this video, guys, and earlier on, we've done another video on Joey's channel. If you're not subscribed to this guy, what the bloody hell are you doing? He's also got a boxing channel too, which I'm not mega into boxing, but I do learn something there. So it's a great place to go. Check him out.
That's why I'm always sporting a black eye as well.
I can't really see it properly on my screen, but I'll be watching these, obviously. And it wasn't me that did it. We'll see you later.